guest speaker is Linda Aldifer. Don't be fooled by her mild manner. She is one of the most powerful women that I have ever met. Her and her predecessor, Linda Jacobs, works with children in divorce care for kids, allowing them to identify their feelings of where they're at and really helping them to survive in divorce. Linda Aldifer, I'm not overemphasizing her work. She is a powerful woman, and we're going to listen to Linda Aldifer. Linda, thank you for joining us today and to help us understand what's going on in the heart of a child as their parents go through the trauma of divorce. So could you explain to us, how are children perceiving when a divorce takes place?
Well, a divorce is like pulling the rug out from underneath the child. Everything that they know that is stable turns upside down. Many children experience an avalanche of emotions that they don't know what to do with, and that's scary for them. They get in trouble if they act out, if they lose their temper. And so they're not sure how to process the emotions, just as adults, not sure how to process the emotions. So there are some things that a parent can do to help minimize the impact of divorce on a child. And first, this seems very obvious, but children need to be reassured that they are loved by both parents. At DC4K, the Divorce Care for Kids group will have two big hearts and a little heart, and they're all attached. And we say, Mom loves you and Dad loves you. They choose not to love each other, and they choose not to live in the same house, but they both still love you. Children need that affirmation. They need to be reminded of that often. Children need grandparent relationships, extended family on both sides, cousins and aunts and uncles. And often with a divorce, those relationships sometimes are cut off. And that's very painful to a child. It's just another layer of grief that they experience. We want to give children stability, and consistent rules and chores in the home is so important. And if there can be consistency in both homes, when they're at dad's house, when they're at mom's house, that's the best case scenario, but it doesn't always work that way. So providing the stability there at your house with rules and consistent expectations is very stabilizing for your child. Create new routines. Often so many things have changed, and creating some new things that a family can do together. Think about tacos on Tuesday, or maybe taking a walk after dinner, just simple things that become a routine that the kids look forward to, and you do too. That is important. If you can keep your promises, a hurting child's heart needs to know that they can trust their parent. And if what their parent says will happen, so keeping your promises and not making a promise you can't keep is very important. Often people will step into relationships very quickly because they just want to get away from the hurt of divorce. But you need to allow yourself and your children to heal before you start dating. Some people say a year or two. To give yourself some time just to stabilize and move forward. Now, this is one thing that most parents don't think about. When you speak against your ex, you're actually hurting your child. When they hear you saying things against their parent who is a part of them, who they feel loyal to, it hurts your relationship with your child. So, trying to be very protective of your kids and what they hear and what you say can minimize the impact of divorce on your child. Never put your child in a position where they would have to choose or defend or stand up for the other parent. And if you can determine that your kids are more important than any battle with your ex, your kids will know that you're on their side. Now, here's some don'ts. Don't make your child the messenger. If there is something that you need to communicate to your ex, don't say, tell your dad this or tell your mom that. Send an email, send a text, but don't put your child in the position of being the messenger. It's just not fair to them. And that's the same for being a spy. Don't put them in that position to have to share everything that's going on in the other house and who was there and what's happening there. It's just not fair to your child. Don't fight or argue in front of your kids. It just stirs the anxiety and it hurts your child. Don't try to buy their affection. And you hear about the Disney dads that buy them all the best and newest of things and take them on trips. But the bottom line is what your child needs is you and stability, not stuff. And make sure when your kids come home after being at the other parent's house or the grandparent's house, make sure your kids don't feel guilty because they've had a good time. So that means listen to their stories, share their joy without judgment or making comments. And keep that communication open so that they know you're all right with the time that they spend at the other parent's house and you want to support them in it. And when your student or your child shares their disappointment, show empathy. Listen to their heart. It's not the time to bash your ex, but listen to their heart. If you as a parent can help your child sort through the emotion that they are feeling, they might say, I'm mad. And mad is the secondary emotion. The first primary emotion might be they feel rejected, or they feel jealous, or they feel fear. If you can identify that first primary emotion that triggers the I'm mad emotion, then you can really help your child communicate what they can communicate to you, what they're feeling, and you know then how to support them. And together you can explore healthy coping skills that might be able to be put into place to help when they're feeling that way.
Linda, let me ask you a question. I know you have dealt with so many children, younger children, and they tell a lot of stories to you, a lot of very painful stories to you, I'm sure, as you gain their trust and minister to them. So when you hear those stories, what are some feedback questions or statements that can be said to comfort the child when they share something that's really difficult for them?
Well, typically, adults don't like children to be upset or mad. And so we like to say, oh, don't feel that way. Get over it. It's not so bad. But actually, that doesn't help them to be able to say, tell me what happened and tell me how you feel about it. And there's lots of emotion wheels you can download off the internet to maybe even point out, are you feeling this emotion? Or are you feeling this emotion? That's what we do in a divorce care for kids group. We are helping kids identify the emotion they are feeling, and then we put together healthy coping skills to help them move forward in that kind of a situation. And one example that might be very helpful for parents that are listening to this, our third lesson, Divorce Care for Kids, is 13 weeks long. And the third lesson is it's all right to be angry, which might set parents off right away. What do you mean? We don't want them to be angry, but they need to be able to process the emotion of anger in a healthy way where they're not hurting themselves or someone else. So we teach the children that anger energy comes out through our hands, our mouth, and our feet. And we all have different combinations of that. And so the students are brainstorming. And there was a little third grade boy that said, I get in trouble all the time for kicking. I kicked my sister. I kicked a hole in the wall at home. I get in trouble at school when I get really mad and I kick someone. And we said, well, this one's easy. Your anger energy wants to come out through your feet. So what can you do using that same motion of kicking to release your anger energy without hurting yourself or someone else? Well, the kids were coming up brainstorming all kinds of ideas. You could kick a soccer ball, you could run in place if you can't go outside and kick your feet up real high. You could ride your bicycle and use that energy moving your feet. And he sat thinking for a while and he said, I know. I could kick boxes in my backyard. I'd never heard of that. I said, boxes? He says, yeah, I can keep empty boxes in the garage. And when I start to get angry, I could get them out and just kick them around the yard. And I said, well, let's see if that works. Are you hurting yourself? No. Are you hurting someone else? No. Do you have access to boxes? He says, yeah, Mom and I can get them from the grocery store. I said, okay. So fast forward 5 weeks, and Mom drops him off, and she says, Miss Linda, could I talk to you out in the hallway for a minute? And sure. She said, I wanted to tell you about our weekend. It was his birthday. His dad had promised a wonderful birthday trip. He was so excited about it. So I didn't plan a kid's party or a family party because he wasn't going to be home all weekend. She said, come 6 o'clock when Dad was supposed to pick him up, he's there by the door with his backpack waiting. At 6:15, she said, I was texting, I was leaving messages saying, hey, where are you? By 6:30, she said, I was spitting mad. My heart was broken. I could not believe he would do this to his son. She said, I went in. By then, he's sitting on the floor by the front door. And she sat down with him. And she said, suddenly I remembered those boxes. And I said, is this one of those moments that we could take the boxes out of the garage and kick them around in the yard? She said, we kicked. First, it was releasing anger. It was energy, just kicking those boxes like crazy. She said, I joined him. I had my own boxes. We were kicking the boxes. And she said, and then I started to cry. And he was crying. And she said, and then we were exhausted and we started laughing. And she said, thank you. That was the first time I was able to enter into his pain and be present. That's what we want to be able to do with our kids. We have to keep the communication open. We have to listen to what they have to say instead of saying, oh, don't feel that. Oh, don't think that way. But really listen to your child's heart and enter in. You can help them process a lot of the emotions like we're teaching them at DC4K. So this avalanche of emotions that overwhelm children. Sometimes with some kids, it looks like the angry acting out kid, and he just erupts for no reason. He's in trouble at school because somebody bumped his desk and he flew off the handle. Well, that shows the turmoil of emotions that are scary to him. He doesn't know how to process them. He doesn't know how to deal with them, and they explode out. And then we have students that do the exact opposite. They withdraw and they put up a wall of protection that says, back off. I'm not letting anyone in. And then we have kids that look like they're doing all right. They seem to be doing all right in school. They seem to be resilient until they hit age 13, 14, 15. And then this is what we call the sleeper effect. All of a sudden, all those unresolved emotions come exploding out. And if I had a penny for every parent that calls our headquarters and says, I've got a 15-year-old, he or she was a straight A student and a great kid, and all of a sudden they're angry, there's rage, they're in trouble everywhere they go. I can't get them to engage in school. And that is a really hard time to try to find a counselor that your student is willing to go to find help. So helping your child process these painful emotions now means that they can move forward in healthy ways.
For the rest of their life. Oh, Linda.
Yeah.
So touching of what you shared. I remember many years ago of going to a training that you were leading, and that eruption principle that you just explained was what I remember most. And this has been, oh goodness, maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I remember that specifically because we have to learn to deal with our emotions, and we as adults don't do it very well. And so, what incredible wealth of information that you have shared with us today. If we can just learn that, of being able to allow children to feel what they're feeling, we would be much better off, all of us, emotionally and mentally. Thank you for your expertise and your sharing with us today.
And if I could add just one thing, is it possible for me to add one thing?
Yes.
What I know is only God can take those broken pieces, the shattered pieces, and form and shape and create it into something that is beautiful. And I've watched that happen in the years that I've led DC4K. Some of the kids that are 15, 16 years ago took DC4K. They're now professionals. And so many of them have a life mission to help hurting kids have hope. That's the picture I would want for all the single parents and their families.
I love that. What a beautiful note to end on. Thank you, Linda, for sharing with us all your information today.
You are welcome.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Thien. I'm a retired teacher and a motivational speaker, and I was asked to give a testimonial today about what it's like to have students in your classroom who have a hardship happening at home, example, like their parents are going through a divorce or separation, and what it does to children. And what a lot of parents don't understand is the breakup is traumatizing enough on them, But when the parent starts talking negatively about the other parent in front of that child will then internalize that. And I didn't think it could happen until after becoming a teacher and watching it happen over and over and over again for over 2 decades in my classroom. What happens is students or children will not take or hate the other parent more than it will hate itself. So when you're sitting there saying, that loser, I hate him, oh my gosh, he's pathetic. Well, that student, your child, is internalizing that because they will never hate their parent more than they hate themselves. I hope I made that clear. Your child will never hate that parent more than themselves. And this comes out in every aspect. Their grades decline. They give up on their passion. They give up on their hobbies. Some start picking fights. Some of them start regressing. Some of them just be careful what you say around your kids, because even though you're mad, they're taking it way different. I hope this helps. Thank you.
Ooh, that's good information. Our next guest speaker is Dr. Kathy Cook. She is the founder and president of Celebrate Kids, based in Fort Worth, Texas. She has influenced thousands of parents, teachers, and children in over 30 countries through her seminars and many books and resources. She will speak to us tonight on a child's core needs, which can help us parent our children and love them to their very core. You're going to love her, Dr. Kathy Cook.
So we are very fortunate to have Dr. Kathy Cook with us today, talking to us about the basic needs of children. So Dr. Kathy, thank you for joining us.
I'm honored to be here. I'm so excited for the ministry that you have with these important people.
Thank you. So for those who are not familiar with your basic platform and what you teach, would you give us those 5 core needs for kids to thrive and survive?
Yeah, I would love to do that. So everything that we do at the ministry is based on this model of core needs. I've written many books and speak on many things, but we always come back to what's the essence, right, of life and parenting. And so we believe that all of us, adults and children, have 5 core needs in this order: security, who can I trust? Not what can I trust, but who can I trust? So the more opportunity children have to know trustworthy people that they learn are on their side, of course, the better. And then identity, who am I? Basic question. And most kids don't come up to us and, mommy, who am I? But it's a core need. Identity creates behavior. Identity causes behavior. So if we don't know who we are, we don't know how to behave. If we only know a negative view of ourselves, we only behave in light of that negative view. And identity is based in security. Again, if I don't have people who I trust telling me who I am, then I'm a wishy-washy and I blow where the wind sends me, and my identity shifts when we don't want it to shift. And then the third one is belonging. Who wants me? Another need, right? And this is so significant, Kathy, to your work. And it's based again on the first 2. So security, who can I trust? Identity, who am I? Facilitates belonging, who wants me? If I have no security and I don't know who I am, I don't know how to enter into relationships. Now, a lot of our young people today believe the lie that they should have 52 million best friends. That's not realistic. I'm not sure 5 best friends is really realistic to try to meet the needs and take care of that many people. But certainly our family is supposed to be where belonging is settled. And that's why, trauma is such a challenging issue. And we'll talk about that. And then we get to purpose. Why am I alive? Why am I alive? Let me back up a second and say this. Belonging is who wants me. And like I said, it's rooted in identity and security. So if somebody's belonging is warped, belonging is off, I can teach friendship skills. They're actually, one of the chapters in the book 5 to Thrive has all the friendship skills. You can teach kids how to have conversations. You can teach kids how to identify who is for them and who is against them. You can teach kids how to break off relationships in healthy ways rather than in damaging ways. But you know what? If their identity is still, I am a jerk, their belonging is still going to be off. So that's why this pyramid is valuable. Does that make sense? I hope. So you can teach the skills at one level of the core needs model, and then you also want to go back down to see if is that the reason that I'm struggling or my kids are struggling. So security, identity, belonging leads to purpose. Why am I alive? Another question is that most of us don't literally ask, but it's the essence, right? It's what gives you hope, and you have to have hope to have purpose. Purpose is what wakes you up after a bad day. Purpose is what causes you to engage in your education. Purpose, why am I alive? Believing that God made you intentionally is such a significant part of that. So purpose, again, rooted in belonging, because we're created to serve. We're created to love. We're created to mentor and to breathe life into people. So if I don't have belonging, then my purpose isn't essential. And then we end the core needs model with competence. What do I do well? And I'm here to say that competence, what do I do well? That's what a lot of parents want for their children, that they would do well academically, artistically, athletically, that they would do well with their character. And all of that is totally legit. Of course, I want you to have those goals for your children, that they would be well and do well. It's rooted in the first four. Children who don't have purpose don't need to do anything well. Children who don't have belonging have no one to serve, therefore they don't need to do anything well. Children whose identity is only rooted in the negatives, is broken, is incomplete, and perfectionistic is maybe their identity. Competence is almost impossible. And security in people can lead to competence, because now I know who to turn to in a time of need. So those are the 5 core needs in that order, met by God, and we can support that as well. Man, I hope that makes sense.
That makes wonderful sense. So in light of those core needs, as we as parents are struggling to fulfill all of those, to encourage our children to grow and become the people that God has in mind for them, what happens to the children when a parent moves out?
Yeah, such a good question, of course, in light of this. Initially, I think in some families, Kathy, initially there can be relief. If there's been a lot of yelling and a lot of tension among the parents, the husband and wife, then security for the children is really hard. They might have trouble going to bed. They might be scared to come home from school, wondering what they're going to find, what kind of attitudes are going to be present. And so initially, there could be relief. Not all the time, but initially, and then that'll shift, I think, right? Because as they realize that they don't get to see, the dad or the mom who they loved as often, or maybe not at all, depending upon the situation. And so it will affect all 5. To be very honest with you, as I've, ministered to families and do my speaking and writing, I've seen some families where that pyramid just, the whole thing just crumbles. The kids, well, I have no one I can trust. This is why the parent who is present with the children must be fully present and must tell the truth and must be someone who is trustworthy. If you say to your children, you can come to me with anything, you better mean that. And if you don't mean that, don't say that. Because if they can't have trust in the parent who they're living with in this moment, of course, they will struggle even more. Their identity, my parents are divorced, I'm from a divorced family. Does that have to be their identity? There's still so many things about them. They still have 2 parents. They still have a family. They still have their, soccer. They still have their piano. They still have the fact that they love to write. So I think it's essential too that in that moment that we make sure the kids know who they are beyond that trauma. Belonging, I think grandparents, cousins, the routines are belonging. I don't know about you, Kathy, but I think I can think back to my childhood and the routines and the memories that I have of every other Sunday lunch with grandma and grandpa. And so if you are a family that has rooted in memories and extended family, and that may not be the case, but if it is the case, I would encourage you, of course, to make as many attempts as possible to keep those relationships alive, even if it's over, a FaceTime kind of a conversation with your kids. Purpose. Your purpose is not to bring your parents back together, right? I mean, I bet you could tell us stories. I bet everyone in the audience could tell us stories of children who feel responsible and then children who want to solve all the problems. And later we can talk a little bit about problem solving. It's actually quite interesting. But what we don't want is for our children to believe that it is their job to make mommy happy, that their purpose is to, to love dad so well that, he'll stop his drinking or whatever might be going on there. And that's why we have to give kids other purposes, whether that be to learn the piano well enough to be in the recital, to choose to go out for dance, to take the first the Red Cross first aid class so you can be a babysitter in the neighborhood, giving them other things that they can focus on so that they understand. And then competence, what do I do well? Again, to be positive and optimistic in these kids with trauma is absolutely essential so that they define themselves beyond the trauma experience.
Yes, yes. So, what are some good questions that we could ask our children? Of course, it's going to depend on the age. I
Yeah.
think primarily of the older teens or even the younger teens, preteens, they're in a ball of confusion. So, what are some good questions? Not that we want to interrogate our children, but we want them to be able to talk, right?
Yeah, I love that. Because kids will tell me, they interrogate me all the time. It's as if the bright white light is in my face. But it's your responsibility to know what's going on. And I love you for digging in, you guys, for you parents who you're not going to let them push you away and you're going to stay present. Like, I'm so proud of you because I can only imagine. Whoa. Wow. I can only imagine the pain. When you want to know your own kids and you want to help them solve their problems and they won't talk to you. It's really hard. Here's a recommendation. When you rather than saying what's wrong, so you notice your kids, they're critical, they're irritable, they have no patience, they throw their backpack, what's wrong? That's the response, right? And I get that. Boys especially have a hard time expressing emotion. Boys, men have as many emotions as girls and women do, but they don't have vocabulary. So we women, if we're frustrated, we're angry, frustrated, mad, upset, ticked off, confused, and just done. Men are angry. And I don't say that lightly, but there's research that would say that, again, men have as many emotions, they just don't have vocabulary. And boys and girls have a hard time identifying what's inside that caused that irritability or that lack of patience or whatever. So what I'm finding could work really well is for you to say to a child, hey, I've noticed that you were really critical with your sister when you played that new game. Normally you're really patient when you teach a new game to Bethany, and you weren't very patient with her and you made her feel really stupid. I know that's not like you, so what's up? So describe what you see rather than asking what's wrong. Describe what you see. Let them know that you've noticed something. You're impatient, you lied, you were careless, you didn't finish your meal, you didn't want to talk to grandma, you stayed in your room all night, whatever it is that you've noticed that legitimately concerns you. Let them know that. Let them know you're observing and that your love compels you to say what's up. The other thing that you can do, Kathy, is a verbal multiple choice. If you have you live with these kids. So if you have a prediction that it might be that, they forgot they had a quiz and they've really been anxious about it, or, dad forgot to call and he's supposed to call on Wednesday nights, or a mom forgot to call, whatever. If you have a prediction, I like the verbal multiple choice. Well, Frank, is it this that upsets you, or is it this, or maybe it's this? And watch the eyes. Because how many of you know that eyes give it away, right? There's an eyebrow lift, or there's the look up at you or the look away from you when you say the thing that is true. And then file that information away and maybe go there a little bit deeper, or maybe just file that away for later. Another thing that I want to recommend, if you haven't thought about this, is a lot of preteens, teens, and children tell me they like to talk in the dark. They don't like our eyes. They tell me, I know I'm going to really disappoint my mom when I tell her this, and I don't want to see her face. Makes sense, right?
Yes.
And so put them to bed, or if you've got older kids, be in the hallway when you know that they're kind of settling down for the night, and just stand there and, well, Mom, what are you doing? Well, I'm just loving you, praying for you, just pondering, what's been going on, and just wait. And how many of you have discovered that your kids will say, hey, Mom? Because a lot of us ask questions of our kids when the siblings are there. They don't want to talk about the bad stuff when the sibling is there. Or we talk to them, right when they get home from school and they're processing so much. Or maybe you are home educating and there's just so much going on. So the dark is a comfortable place. And, maybe you've discovered that your kids come into your bedroom and, join you there. And that's can be a safe and secure place. I also want to say that, how we were mentioning, Kathy, the danger of allowing kids to think that they should problem solve, that it's their job to put mom and dad back together. In light of that, I think a great question to ask kids is, what problems would you like to solve? Now, that's a great question for preteens and teens who are trying to figure out what to do with the rest of their lives. Questions like, what do you want to do when you grow up and where you're going to go to college, aren't as effective today. And I address that in my book, Screens and Teens. It's because kids are multifaceted, multi-passionate, multi-able. Questions like, what do you want to do when you grow up, sound really limiting. The question, what problems do you want to help solve, honors them. And one of the reasons for that is that, unfortunately, our children are seeing the world broken on the World Wide Web,
Right.
right? Before they're developmentally ready to handle all the mess that they see, and now they have mess in their family. And so they are designed by God to be oriented toward problem solution. I believe that. So to ask, what problems do you want to help solve? If they say something that you know is not their job, but they're honest with you, oh my goodness, what a privilege for you to say, oh, Sarah, it's not your job. What are some other problems that we could legitimately work on?
Okay. Good, good. You know what I particularly love about that, Dr. Kathy, is the tone in which you stated it. I think a lot of parents can get in a lot of trouble by their tone. The way that you stated it was so non-threatening. And I think it's so important for us to watch our tone and what we're saying that we're not saying.
You know, for us to be optimistic, hopeful, positive, those are to go into our conversations. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that lightly given the trauma. But again, to protect our children from as much as we can and to protect our own hearts from any more, to expect the best. And again, that's our choice. It is a choice to be encouraging and optimistic. So.
Yeah, I love that. And you speak about in the dark, and that is so great. I've not heard that before. So I do speak to parents and tell them to sit on the floor beside the bed, away, maybe lay your head on the bed and away from them, so that they feel free to open up. But how excellent to know it's your eyes sometimes. It can be intimidating for your children. And the dark might be just what we need to do. You say in one of your books, and your books are incredible, and I am just so fortunate to have connected with you and have you here, but you say that a child wants to be known. And how do they want to be known right now as they're going through this trauma?
Well, they want to be known for more than a child of trauma, that's for sure. Thanks for asking this question. Identity controls behavior. We are created, God knows our name. We're created intentionally, and we want to be known. That's why we often do what we do. So in the midst of the trauma, let me just share, we want our kids to have a complete identity, to know who they are intellectually, so to still pay attention to their academics and to be positive and optimistic there, to know whether you're the parent who's with them a lot or the parent who's not with them a lot, to know if they're working on a dramatic reading for an English class, are they working on a long-term paper for a history class, to be aware of that and to be supportive and to not ask questions that simply judge ability, but are interesting about, I want to learn with you. Sarah, you're learning about this, I'd love to learn with you. So to talk about the intellectual self, to talk about the social self, who are you hanging with? Who has been supportive of you? Who have you felt you could share your life with? And who have you known that it would be unwise for you to share, the entire story? And that public and private knowledge thing is obviously very important as well. And then there's the emotional side, certainly to know their emotions. And when they are joyful, to call it out and say, Frank, so glad to see the joy today. And if Dave is angry, to acknowledge that and say, Dave, you have a lot of reasons to be angry. Like, I get that. And you hug and you love and you play a board game and you distract, but you don't say, well, why are you angry? I mean, that's not a terribly wise question to ask if you know as a parent that there's something legitimate going on in his life. And so there's the emotional side, the social side, the intellectual side. Character qualities, really important. And, Kathy, to make sure that our kids know that character ought to be a 24/7, 365 consistency. Now, things change us. I mean, I'll admit that, well, here's an example. Like I'll be in a good mood and then I'll get in the wrong line at the grocery store. Anybody have that experience? And before you know it, I'm complaining like everybody around me. And I had no intention of going negative. But, the Bible teaches us very clearly that you got to be careful of who you hang with. And so, but our character, ideally we raise up our kids so that they're patient no matter who they're with. They're generous no matter who they're with. They're other-centered no matter who they're with. they're kind. And we believe at Celebrate Kids so much in character that many of my books, including Five to Thrive, have an appendix at the back of character qualities, because it matters that we know the heart, we know the essence of ourselves. So I think to talk to our kids about, man, I saw you being kind to the neighbor. I saw you being curious. I saw that you were careful. I appreciate that you were grateful. Gratitude and joy, by the way, are the foundation of obedience. Now, I don't have time to get into that, but there's solid research that people who are consistently grateful and consistently joyful, not circumstantially happy, and not obligated to say thank you, but we have as a character, we are grateful, joyful people. That is the root of obedience or even righteousness. And that's something that should provoke some thought among you. And so ask yourself, when do you call out gratitude from your kids, and when do you call out their joy? Wake them up and say, hey, joyful Jill, or hey, joyful Kathy, and just kind of set the stage. And so I think those are some important things. Certainly they need to know what they're good at. Not all the negatives. They need to know what they need to work on. We all need to know our weak areas so that we know what we need to work on. But I think kids in trauma, give them hope. And hope comes from our interests, and hope comes from our strengths. So talk about those things.
Yes, and talk to us. We know this, but I want to hear it from you, Dr. Kathy, the importance of listening and not jumping into the parent-teacher mode.
Oh, gosh.
Help us emphasize that for us.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, to be fully present as a listener, to listen not for your turn to talk, and to listen not to judge, but to listen motivated by love, to listen to learn, to have facial expressions and a posture of intentionality, leaning in, to be fully present with your phone even in another room, much less on silent. And give kids time. And you know what? If you haven't been fully present, I respect that. I can only imagine some of you are dealing with the number of decisions you're making and calls you have to make, and limited awake hours between maybe work and when someone's available. And I mean, you guys know your own situation. I don't need to rehearse it for you, but I respect that being fully present to your children is a legitimate challenge. And yet we would say to you today that they are your children. And this is a limited opportunity for you, talk about time frame, to let them know that you're there for them. And so to be fully present, I sometimes sit, Kathy, like this. I'm a chatty Kathy. I'm logic smart, so I can often solve someone's problem before they know they have one, which is not a good thing. Because I want to help, I tend to ask why and how come, and well, have you tried this? And all of that's legitimate at the right time. But to listen longer to the whole story, to listen longer to their thoughts about what went wrong. And then I sometimes say to children and adults, well, were you just venting, or were you just needing a chance to hear yourself process, or would you like some advice? Sometimes I ask permission, and I'll say to a child, do you want to know what I think? And they'll say, well, not yet. And I'm like, that's okay. Because how many of us are internal processors? I benefit greatly from hearing myself talk about something and then wondering, I wonder what did I really mean by that? And then, what's really cool is the kid will come back an hour later or at bedtime in the dark and say, hey, Mom, I was thinking about that conversation we had. And what about if I try this? And you know what's so cool? If they come up with the same idea that you would have recommended, oh my gosh, now you're raising and training, righteousness, right? And now you can say, to your kids, hey, Kathy, that's a great idea. Way to think it through. And now they feel mature and ready to tackle tomorrow's issue. Mm-hmm. So if you do all the problem solving for them, they won't grow up. Yeah. I probably rambled a little bit there, but I hope that's the essence. I hope that was helpful.
That is very helpful, because we do want to fix it. We want to fix it right now and make it right. And we want to expedite it because we have limited time and we're just going to get to the bottom line. And that doesn't help them grow and mature or process. Yeah. And it's so difficult for us not to give judgment as well. And instead of judging, we could ask good questions.
Mhm, mhm.
And your resources speak to that. And any comments further you'd like to say would be awesome.
You know, something's been on my mind as we've been talking, Kathy, and that is um, grace, mercy, truth, right?
Mhm.
Boundaries. I think that as I've worked with parents around the world, the tendency for some is to just anything goes. You know, the kids have been traumatized and you know they're heartbroken by what's happened, and you know they miss their mom, they miss their dad, they miss the house, they miss the whatever. I mean,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, you guys, the decisions you make really matter, ladies and gentlemen. And but I want to say to you, you will do great damage to your children if you just anything goes because you think that that's love. And I want to say with a lot of respect that that's not love. Love is boundaries. Boundaries are blessings when given in love. And I want you to, I pray that you would have the strength to say no to the no things and yes to the yes things. And you would even say, Jake, it's because I love you that the answer is no. Because I know the big picture and I know what's coming next. The answer is no. Go sit down.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah.
And I don't. Again, I'm not saying that they're going to jump away and go, okay, okay, mom. You know.
Mhm.
But again, this is where we need to make sure that we're taken care of and that we have support and that we are loved and that we have people that we can vent with and that we nurture ourselves and rest and wake up early enough to have quiet time or go for a walk at noon, do what we can do to make sure that we're as healthy as we can be so that we can have truth that rules
Yeah.
with grace and mercy, you know, with, hey, you know, Jake, I get it. You know, let's have ice cream for dinner. I mean, there's nothing wrong with an occasional dinner of ice cream because you've all had a bad day.
Mhm.
But I think you would agree with me, Kathy, that we got to keep the boundaries. It really is essential to security. Again, who can I trust? Many children tell me that the home they go to with an anything goes, I can use technology whenever I want.
Yeah. So what you're saying, and I love, is to be the consistent parent
Mm.
and not to be the Disney dad or the Disney mom. That consistent parent is really a security for the children, isn't it?
It is. And could I even say it's security for the parent?
Mm.
Because now the parent knows this is right in our family. These are our values. This is how we manage life. And this is how we don't do it. There's security there for the parent. Now, I'm not forced in front of my angry 16-year-old to make a flippant decision that I regret later that night because I know the values in this family, and we're still a family, the way that we're going to raise or the way that I'm going to raise my kids here, this is what right and this is what's wrong. So there's security for the parent.
Which leads into the next question and the final question. You have said some profound things, and I will tell you, I watched Kill the Spider 3 times.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
I shared it with my children. It is one of your YouTubes that was done 7 years ago, but it's about those basic core um, needs of
Yeah.
the children. And I passed it on to my kids, and my daughter-in-law posted it on Facebook because it is so core for the development and the growth of our children. It's so core. And if we can get those cores right,
Yes.
kids are going to make it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And we can get them right even in trauma.
Yeah.
I mean, trauma doesn't have to define us the rest of our life. It might always be a reason that certain things are challenging, but it doesn't have to be an excuse for being an idiot. You know, it really doesn't have to rule our world. The core needs can be met.
Yes, they can. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And it doesn't have to be with a lot of, you don't need a lot. You can have the basics. For my kids, when they were little, we didn't have much. We had popsicles in the park. That was what we had. And the memories to this day that they
Exactly.
remember.
Exactly. Children appreciate little consistencies. Consistency is a part of security. It is memory making. Now we look back on good days when we're in the middle of a bad day. So really, that's such a popsicles in the park. I love that. We should start a campaign. Go have popsicles in the park. That's brilliant. Love that.
Put away the phones, the technology, and everything else. Go back to
Yeah.
popsicles in the park.
Yeah.
For
For
sure.
sure.
Your books, which we listed before this interview, are available, and we'll have that on our resource page for people to go to. But I'm curious, Kathy, of all the books that you've written, what's your favorite?
Oh dear.
I know that's like asking what's your favorite child. It's not fair.
Come on, exactly. I actually, I really think Start with the Heart, which is about prioritizing relationships and not behavior, how to compliment and correct, how to help kids understand consequences for their choices. I'm not a mean, bad mom. You caused that by your choice to behave that way. How to be a teacher, coach, referee, and cheerleader. Um, the beliefs that kids have to have in order to survive in the midst of chaos. Start with the Heart, I think, is maybe my favorite because some of what I've taught in it goes way back to when I earned a PhD. And then certainly the newer book, Five to Thrive, that we've been talking about today, is everything that we do at Celebrate Kids. But all of my books have a chapter on the core needs. That's how important they are. And so, and this book, by the way, was written not for parents. This is the only book I've written at Celebrate Kids that's written for people. And then obviously parents will apply it, husbands and wives will apply it, grandparents apply it, single people apply it. But I wrote it more generally to reach the masses because the core needs are for everyone, as you've said.
And maybe that's why I was so intrigued with it, is because it is not just children, it's
No.
all of us.
Mhm.
All of us have those core needs. And when we can respond to those core needs in a healthy manner, we can grow, we can be complete, we can be what God intended us to be, and that is healed and healthy individuals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's what allows us to risk. And without risk, we don't grow. And there's tragedy there.
Yes.
All of us, I would pray that all of us recognize that there's more to life than what we're currently living and that we thrive when we go after it.
I love your knowledge. I love your
Thank you.
heart toward children. And this has been a phenomenal opportunity to have you. And we could spend hours really on this topic. There are so many scenarios we could bring up, but we do want to just get the essence of it. Your books are going to be on the resource list. I'd highly encourage Five to Thrive. I'm sorry I didn't have it here to hold up. And I have read through that, as well as you can see Dr. Kathy on many Focus on the Family. She's been frequent flyer there.
Yes.
So, and accessible. So as we conclude, Dr. Kathy, tell us about Celebrate Kids.
Sure. So I'm based in Fort Worth, Texas. I have a ministry strategy team in Jacksonville, Florida. We want to help parents raise the children they were given, not the children they wish they had. We really want people to recognize God's intentionality when creating children and when putting a family together. So we do that by product developments. We have books and resources. We have a great podcast. We have a really good social media presence. And then I'm a public speaker. I get paid to talk, which is really fun. And so I tend to do many conferences. Now, obviously, we're in a different situation. Currently, we're praying that conferences would open up. We also do our own conferences. We have a women's conference in St. Louis, March 5th and 6th. You can learn about that at ignitewomen.org. And so in addition to getting hired to speak for churches, schools, and conventions, we do our own ministry events here to disciple parents and families. We'll be doing parent education conferences called Redirected. We're also going to do a multi-generational family conference where grandparents, parents, and kids are welcome. And that'll be in St. Louis in late May. So if people go to celebratekids.com, we're in the process of updating our website. And so keep an eye on that and hang out with us at Facebook or Instagram, and you'll learn all about what we're doing. We exist to serve, just like you, Kathy, we exist to serve you. It's about ministering hope, healing, and the love of God to you, because it's not easy, but it's possible. Amen.
Amen. It is. And I've always said if mommies would be mommies and daddies would be daddies, what a different world we would
Oh, come on.
have.
Great statement. Yeah.
Dr. Kathy, thank you so much for your contribution, for your heart, and for being with us today.
Hey, it's been my pleasure, Kathy. Thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for being so well prepared. What a joy to be with you. I pray that everyone who's listening is going to be blessed by their time with us.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ginger, and my parents got divorced late high school and then really completed the divorce in early college. And Kathy asked me to speak as a child of divorce. One of the incidences that happened that really was very upsetting to me as a young teen, I mean, I was like 17. I was living with my dad and his new wife and their daughter, who was very young, like 3. So I was like 18, she was 3. They went to church and had their family picture taken for the church directory. No problem. Normally not a problem at all. And my stepmom came home with this beautifully framed picture of the 3 of them and put it on the piano in a place of honor. And I was very hurt. I'm like, actually, like, it was so painful to me to see the picture because it was the image of everything that I had feared. And how did I fit into this family that they were creating? And then when she framed it and put it on the piano, it really brought home to me that I didn't fit in the family at all, at least not in her. At least I took it to be that I didn't fit in it in her head at all. She felt like her family was complete with the 3 of them and there was no room for me to be in that family at all. Sometimes I just think that things happen. I don't think she intentionally did it. I don't even think she meant to or realized how painful that would be to me, but maybe keep in mind when your kid could be reacting to their own fears. Like I immediately moved out of the house because I felt like I just did not fit there. There was no room for me. So that's where it left for me.
Thank you, Ginger, for that reminder. How we may be doing things we think are totally innocent, and yet it's hurting our children based on their insecurities as they go through the trauma of divorce. Some good things to note there. Linda Aldifer taught us something that really is a life skill of being able to identify the emotion and then express it in a way that doesn't harm ourselves, other people, or property. That's a life skill we all could use. I know many adults who haven't quite conquered this yet. And then Dr. Kathy Cook spoke to us about the core needs of children and how we need to provide those core needs right now, even though life is in turmoil, that we are the person that they can trust, that our word is golden. When we say it, we mean it, and we do it. By keeping that structure around our children, we can protect them even now through this traumatic time. I took a lot of notes. I'm curious what you will start to apply the minute that this seminar is over. Is it helping our children identify their emotions? Or is it helping us provide that structure so that our children get the core needs so they can survive and make it through this difficult time of trauma and divorce?